What is a paradigm? A paradigm is a worldview, a reality infrastructure. It's an Instagram filter applied not just to the senses, but to everything. Everything you experience through your paradigm. Your relationships, your take on politics, your decision making, even your innermost thoughts. It's the pair of sunglasses through which you perceive reality. And because its filters are applied to absolutely everything, of course, you never know it's there. No one looks at their own sunglasses. Why would you? The whole point, if they're comfortable, is that you forget you're wearing them. And we do. We all do. It's only when the sun goes in that we suddenly find ourselves wondering, why the hell is it so dark? It's then that, normally, you remember your sunglasses and you reach up to take them off. Now, we, by which I mean society, are currently at the first stage. We're wondering why the sky looks so heavy. The mutual filters that we've all been wearing, that in fact we've all been wearing for centuries now, are dark. They're dark in ways we can't see. And that was fine for a time. In the 20th century, the material world was somehow very bright, very hopeful. But that dream is fading. To many, life is bleak, hopeless, even worthless. It just doesn't seem to amount to anything. And there's a sense, seldom spoken of in the mainstream, that there's something very wrong with the world. We feel as if we've lost something dear to us. It's as if the colour has drained from the picture somehow and left everything grey, low contrast and shabby. And it's this feeling, the drabness of things, that keeps so many of us addicted to sources of temporary brightness, whether they be chemical or otherwise. We all long for the world to be full, to be bright and vigorous, to be heartfelt. But it seems an impossible task. Generating that brightness, finding new wells of it every day is exhausting. Exercise routines, travel, music, apps, and in the end, it just doesn't work. Finding brightness or hope in this or that new fad or excitement involves this never-ending merry-go-round of newness and bigness that, when it comes down to it, leaves us no better off than we were before the next big thing. And as a result, we feel a sort of hamster wheel pointlessness, as if our time is somehow cursed, doomed to a repetitive treadmill plodding where nothing really matters. It all sounds rather dystopian, and that's how it looks, no doubt about it. But therein lies the point. That's how it looks. So, why does the world look dark? Because of the filters. We are wearing sunglasses in the rain. Through them, life looks jaded and meagre. Absolutely it does. But that isn't the world. That's our worldview. The darkness is in the paradigm. We all know that our consumption, our material greed, our lust for power is destroying the natural world and simultaneously leaving us somehow bereft, somehow soulless. What we don't know is that our greed is a product of our paradigm. And it's the most tragic of all greed. It's the greed for brightness in those wearing sunglasses. That's what's wrong with the world. And the answer, of course, isn't to seek out brighter and brighter and brighter lights in the hope of eventually seeing something sparkle in the gloom. No, the answer is, of course, to take off the sunglasses, even if that means blinking for a while. To do this, what we need most is perspective. If we are going to take off the sunglasses, we need a grip on them. We need to see them. For this, we need to step outside the box of now so as to see things broadly. Some people think in seconds, some in hours, weeks, years, centuries. Right now, we need to think on the scale of conscious humanity, i.e., the scale of civilization. Every culture has its own paradigm, its own way of viewing the world. Broadly speaking, a culture is a paradigm. No people has ever looked at things the way they really are. We know that the Sumerians, the Assyrians, the ancient Egyptians, the Phoenicians, the Greeks, the Mongols, the Norse had some pretty messed up ideas about reality. They worshipped falcons, they talked to rocks, they believed that the sun travelled across the sky in a giant canoe. And yes, we can laugh. But the first and most important lesson of paradigmatic thinking is this: we are no different. Every culture, every single culture lives in the modern present. And we are just another civilization, another age, another people, another set of flawed and highly inventive hominids whose theories of reality will, like all the others, end up sounding a little ridiculous. And in fact, our age isn't special because it's modern. Quite the opposite. We are actually at the very tail end of a worldview, and the broad brush of history will paint us as Aristotelians, as Newtonians, as children of the errors of the Age of Enlightenment. Some cultures, like the ancient Hindus, sat at the vanguard of a way of thinking, genuinely breaking new ground. We are not yet in that position. Instead, we are overseeing the last days of the old Western paradigm, such as has held sway since the Romans spread Greek and Christian ideas into what would become the West. In truth, this is not a modern age. We are still wearing the same pair of sunglasses Caesar was wearing when he landed in Britain. None of this is our fault, of course. We are the people of now, born into our place and age, and we can't take responsibility for having inherited an ancient and creaking worldview that is no longer fit for purpose. That is simply our lot. We should, however, for our own sakes, take responsibility for seeing it. And that means undergoing some real cultural self-examination. Now, I'm not talking here about the addressing of issues such as racism, misogyny, or homophobia, grave though those problems are. Those are all symptoms of a worldview problem. They are not the underlying issue. It's very easy to say all bigots are evil, but it's also useless. It's an us versus them cop-out. Bigotry stems from a deeper malaise, one we all suffer from. So, rather than trying to put out the fires, we need to ask, what is starting them in the first place? Rather than condemning consumerism, we need to ask why we feel the need to consume. Rather than puffing ourselves up with pride at our technological wizardry, we need to look at the deep problem that underlies the need for all the distraction. The simple truth is, we've got it wrong. Over the years, countless traditional cultures, before they were swept aside or enslaved, have thought of Westerners as mentally sick, as desperate, deluded, pitiful, even as mad. And they were right. Now, that's an easy and provocative statement to make in isolation, and it's even easier to ignore it, call it a matter of opinion. But the genius of our times, the genius of the heroic Western ideal, the great boon of our dark foray into pure materialism is this: the falsehood of the Western paradigm is no longer a question of belief. It's no longer a question of opinion. Gone are the superstitious days of faith versus faith or dogma versus dogma. What we have now, and we have science to thank for this, is information. Science, that extraordinary, courageous endeavour, has now provided ample evidence, well documented, rational and easily accessible, that our worldview is factually incorrect. Not just a bit skewed. Wrong. Just plain wrong in its fundamental assumptions. And this involves no spooky belief in a Bronze Age folktale. We are well beyond that. Rationally, logically, empirically, it is now quite clear we have based our paradigm, thus our entire culture, on an axiomatic structure that is false. And the proof is already out there. The annals of physics are full of it. We simply haven't yet summoned the collective strength to deal with the full implications. Not in the public domain, anyway, which is the place, of course, that holds the worldview. Lone voices of genius have pointed the way. Nietzsche, Einstein, Jung, D'Espagnat. But the Western world, to its great cost, hasn't listened. Instead, we've continued in the same vein as before, hoping that we'll be able to fix the contradictions, fix our problems, without looking deeply at the way we are. Crucially, we're hoping never to have to admit we were wrong. We're hoping never to have to admit that we are, in fact, responsible for the current ills of the world. But this period of cultural self-examination is unavoidable. Carbon dioxide, inequality, and hate are going to see to that. So, there's a paradigm shift coming. Is that a scary thought? Yes. Is it an exciting one? Yes. Why? Because the shift that's coming is going to remove the sunglasses. And it's then that we'll see what we've been missing. The true nature of reality, reality unfiltered by our dismal worldview, is more beautiful, more rational, more logical, more extraordinary, brighter than any mainstream Western system, either scientific or religious, has dared to suppose. We've been starved of hope. But this long dark night is going to usher in a new dawn. And it's our tricky but vital task to oversee the transition beyond these troubling times and to open up the possibility of a future in the sunlight. That is where we stand in the broad sweep of civilization. The change is going to happen, and before long, we'll look back on the madness of materialism, the anxiety of this lonely, pained age, and the anger, the tears of the only people in history brave enough for real atheism. We'll look back and we'll smile. We'll smile because we'll know that that deprivation, that darkness, was necessary. Why else would we think to take off the sunglasses?